I think if I cursed more in my personal life, I would probably accidentally let it slip more, when I was on a radio or a TV show, the kind of thing where you can't do that. I might just accidentally do that. Also, there's the thing where, people are just ripping curse words one right after the other, and then they go right on air. And it's just you have to stop on a dime and start speaking a different way. As I said before, I just don't believe I would trust myself to do that. So for the most part, I don't do that. But I think the way that you would speak to a team of football players, if you're an SEC football coach, just might be different. So no judgment from me on that one way or another. And I thought the whole thing was just very entertaining. It was very, very funny. And Xavier Cottle is right. Some of y'all know me so well. Some of you know me so well. Xavier said the reason why the 1st and 15 was late starting is because I was trying to clean up the audio. That actually really is true. I almost didn't get a golden shoe ready because I got so busy trying to fix this audio exactly the way that I wanted it. So in this particular case, I would say that Xavier is quite correct on that. So good stuff. All right, let's get ready to go. All right, it's good to have you with us. It's DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. We're on all the platforms now. So hello to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Here is the show for you today. We got Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, stopping by. That's going to be a fun conversation. By the way, you see my SEC Country gear, SEC Country Live this afternoon. We're going to have a fun guest there on that as well. Mike Morgan, who's actually calling the Georgia game on Saturday for the SEC Network. He's going to be with us for SEC Country Live, so we'll talk a lot of dogs with Mike. Mike also sees all the other SEC teams play there as well, so we'll get some good insight around the league. But specifically on the team that Mike's about to call the game for on Saturday, Mike Morgan, SEC Network on SEC Country Live today. So we got a bunch going on. We're glad you're with us. I told you before, had a little bit of a dilemma about how to even bring the Kirby audio onto the show. I think I've come up with a solution. You can judge me, see how well we did. It is on the way next. It's DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. And it begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I firmly believe, and could never be convinced otherwise, I have the greatest job in the world. I get to come on here and talk to all of you and talk about Georgia football each and every day. However, there is a weird thing about my job in that because we do DawgNation Daily every day, it couldn't be DawgNation Daily if we didn't do it every day. Because we do it every day, Monday through Friday, there's this sense in which I'm never quite not thinking about the next day's show. Now, thankfully, I like living that way. I told our video audience this before the show began today. I almost enjoy preparing for the show as much, if not more so, than I enjoy doing the show. It's kind of like the way a football player, football coach, they love practice. They love the regular day in, day out grind, and the games are just the thing that you do to show how well you've been practicing. I feel like the show that we do is a reflection of how well we've prepared, and I actually really enjoy the preparation part. And it's a good thing that I do, because if I didn't, it would just be too much. It would just overwhelm me at a certain point in time, because you're always just kind of trying to stay plugged into what Georgia fans are talking about, what college football fans kind of care about. You're always thinking about the next day's show. So when the thing kind of erupted yesterday afternoon into last night, and by now a lot of you are aware of this, that somehow, some way, and who knows how any of this stuff happens in 2021. I have my suspicions, but I'll push those aside for a moment. Somehow, some way, there's this audio that gets leaked onto the internet of Kirby Smart and his halftime speech, supposedly against Florida, where, he is just so fired up. Obviously, the language is adult language. I don't really speak that way in my personal life, but I don't really care what a football coach says to football players. That's a totally different realm. I don't do that for a living. If I did that for a living, maybe I'd speak that way too. I don't know. I'm not interested in judging Kirby Smart for the language he uses one way or another. That's just not my job to do that. But in terms of the tone and the intensity of the speech, you're just so, I've heard 1,000 people say, but yeah, I just run through a wall for Kirby Smart after hearing that. And I felt the same way. Man, I was ready. I could have wrestled a bear after hearing Kirby Smart challenging that Georgia team to go out there and finish the second half against Florida the way they finished the first half. And it's just great. However, as somebody who thinks about the show all the time, my mind is immediately processing, all right, how can I even use this audio on the show? Because when I tell you that it's profane, it is so profane. Now, you've heard us before We've bleeped things for clips because, we're on the radio in Athens, so we're governed by FCC regulations there. And, I also have bosses that have a certain standard that they expect me to adhere to around here. So even if we weren't FCC regulated on the radio, I've still got, I still got a lot of folks up the corporate hierarchy that I got to keep happy on a day in, day out basis. So I can't just go out here just playing every kind of profane piece of audio possibly. And if I bleep this audio as much as it needs to be bleeped, well, there's just no context for it whatsoever. It's also kind of a worthless conversation to talk about something because while a lot of you are really plugged in and you know exactly what I'm talking about when I mention the speech that's all over the internet, we also have a pocket of Georgia fans who are busy. They work, they raise families, they manage businesses. They are captains of industry. They are powerful people who don't follow every single twist and turn of the Georgia media sphere, the social media, whatever the hot button issues are. They don't get all of that. They come to this show to provide that. So I've got this thing that has to be talked about because it's so interesting, almost impossible to share online on a show like this because it's so profane. And yet if I try to talk about this without giving people an example of what I'm talking about, there's just no context for it whatsoever. So I'm like, as much as I was enjoying the video, there's this huge dilemma of how do you even get this thing out there for the world to experience if just given the constraints of what we deal with here each and every day. So here is the compromise I've kind of come up with. Now, quick backstory on me. So I grew up, kind of a child of the 80s into the 90s. And back then, we had the basic cable, but we didn't have the premium cable. I mean, for 5 minutes, I think my grandparents had HBO, but back then all the words had all of the movies had all the the adult language in them, and so they got rid of that pretty quick. So when I was growing up, all I really had was USA Network, or even back in the old days, you had Channel 36. If you're talking about local, I guess that's UHF channels, but a lot of USA Network, a lot of TNT. A lot of, what else other channels used to play the movies. And so it's the movie, and it's the Hollywood movie. It's the movie that you could have seen in the theaters. It's the movie the cool kids were watching on HBO. It's the movie the cool kids were renting on VHS. But I didn't really have access to any of that kind of stuff. All I really had access to was the basic cable version of this, which was very edited. And it was enough that you could kind of figure out what was going on with it, but it was still, it's pretty edited all the way around that you're missing a lot of the real oomph that goes along with that. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about here. But for those of you that don't, let me give you an example. 1995, terrific movie, Casino. Are you familiar with this? It's Martin Scorsese directed picture about how the mob was, helped, kind of build Las Vegas, or at least had a big role in the kind of the early days of Las Vegas. It's Joe Pesci, it's Robert De Niro. This is a classic movie, but it's also a hard R rating. There's a lot of bad language. So if you're watching on, VHS back in the old days, or DVD back in the old days, no problem. You're watching it on Showtime, HBO, something like that, no problem. But if you're watching it on basic cable, given the fact the basic cable couldn't just let all the bad words fly, you had to have the TV edit to make this work. So as a way of kind of giving some context for what the TV edit used to be like, here is what would otherwise be a very profane interaction in the movie Casino that was kind of cleaned up for television. Here's about 10, 15 seconds of this. Take a listen, just so we're all on the same page here.
I don't know whether you notice or not, but you only have your lousy casino because I made that possible. I'm what counts out here, not your fancy country clubs or your fancy TV shows. And what the heck are you doing on TV anyhow? I get calls from back home every single day. They think you went batso.
Only on TV because I got to be able to hang around a casino.
So you get a little bit of an idea there. I mean, Joe Pesci saying heck. Joe Pesci doesn't say heck. That's not the kind of thing that he would say. But for the TV edit, you have to kind of insert that in there. Or the fancy TV show, or the fancy whatever else. I think we can use our imagination and know that in the actual movie, that's not what Joe Pesci says. So maybe you've seen the TV edits before, maybe you haven't. But the idea of the TV edit did give me the thought of, ooh, maybe this is a way for me to get some of this Kirby Smart speech, which you can actually listen. If you want to listen to the full thing, there's a link to it at DawgNation.com. You can go do that there. But maybe this is a way for me to get like the Kirby Smart thing on the air with some context without getting myself in any kind of trouble with my bosses or FCC for radio or, the podcast platforms, the big tech overlords, whatever else. Maybe this is my way of kind of not getting in trouble with all of them. So let me let you judge this for yourself. Here is my attempt to take some of this speech, fiery, intense. Kirby Smart challenges his team to dominate Florida in the second half using the kind of profane language that you would expect from a football coach in a locker room setting. But this is my way of cleaning it up for kind of a family-friendly audience. Y'all judge me and see how well I did with this. Take a listen.
You know what, guys?
Flipping. Flipping.
Here we do it how we play. It's 0 to
Flipping.
0, and you make them never want to play again. Don't say
Stop.
so they're undisciplined.
Behinds.
We are disciplined. Physically, I want to break them. I'm talking about
Flipping.
breaking
Gentlemen.
on defense and offense.
So how do you think that went? Is that go okay? Gives you a little context for what maybe Kirby Smart was saying there without getting ourselves in trouble. In all honesty, as I said before, I really enjoyed what the fact that leaks out onto the internet. I think that's really fun. As somebody who hates Florida, you just love the idea that Kirby Smart hates them there as well. You love the idea that one of the things that he challenges his team with is, this is our year. He uses an adjective for the word year, but whether you include that or not, the notion that Smart, I think, really believes that. And I think Smart's really pushing his team there in that regard. He wants to see them break them on offense and defense. That's the kind of physicality that Smart has made the hallmark of this team, and it's all working out really well right now. So kind of a lighthearted way to get things going here today. I really enjoyed that. I'm glad that it leaked on the internet, whether it was a sanction leak or whether it was something that somebody else just snuck onto there. One way or another, I think it paints Georgia in the intense light that's authentic and true to this team right now. They're going out there looking to break its opponents each and every week, and so far so good as far as all of that is concerned. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hello to you, and good to have you with us, no matter how you get to us today. Video starting at 9:45 for our 1st and 15. DawgNation.com, the DawgNation app. On video after that, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch at 10 a.m. We do it on video for you each and every day. Of course, podcast form, however you find them, the Apple Player, the Spotify, world-famous-DawgNation.com. All kinds of ways to listen to the podcast. Radio at noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. We are just really glad to have you as a part of the program. Also, coming up today, we have a very special guest, something we have not done here in a little while, but I'm going to be happy to welcome on Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, who always has great things to say, followed the Dogs for a long time, knows the landscape around the rest of the SEC, meeting with these coaches all throughout the offseason. He's got great insight on what's happening around UGA, the SEC. We'll talk to Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, here coming up in just a moment. Before that, I also want to get ready to go around the Doghouse, which is presented today and furnished today by our friends at Rooms to Go. Now, I want to try to get serious here a little bit after a little bit of a lighthearted start. And listen, there's nothing wrong with being a little lighthearted and having a little bit of fun on a time in which Georgia's handled its business in the SEC and now tuning up for a couple of weeks before getting ready to go take on, we presume, Alabama in the SEC championship game. We'll see if that actually works out that way. But let's kind of get a little bit serious here for a moment. Around the Doghouse, as I said before, furnished by Rooms to Go. One of the interesting things to take place in the game against Tennessee on Saturday was a personnel change along the offensive line, where Warren Erickson, I guess, was dealing with a little bit of illness. There was a kind of a flu outbreak, we were told, for the Georgia team. Erickson, one of the guys that dealt with that. He steps off. In his place steps Xavier Truss. Truss is a guy we've seen at tackle before for Georgia. Started at left tackle, for instance, in the Sugar Bowl game against Cincinnati at the end of last season. But now apparently he's been working in there at the guard spot. And I think a lot of folks thought that when Truss came in, Georgia got a little bit of a boost. And that interior of the offensive line has seemingly been a little bit of a work in progress all year for Georgia. But is the insertion of Truss going to be a start of some new good things for Georgia? And could Truss in that spot there at that right guard spot, could it be the kind of thing that sticks here for the rest of the season? Maybe making some folks remember back when Ben Cleveland came in as a starter late in the 2017 year and the impact, the boost that seemed to give Georgia there at the time. Well, Kirby Smart was asked about Truss yesterday and kind of gave his evaluation of not just what Truss did in the game against Tennessee, but kind of what he's been doing leading up to that opportunity to move to guard and get some playing time against an SEC foe on the road. Here's Kirby Smart on that.
Truss has done a good job. He's worked at guard. He and Warren have both worked in there some. Warren was still out yesterday with the flu symptoms from the game, but he was back today and working. And Xavier has a lot of ability. Xavier's biggest thing is, can he carry over and focus and concentrate to do the things he has to do and really play with a lot of intensity. So that's one of the things is dependability is the biggest thing with Xavier is snap count, assignment. And to his credit, he hasn't been at guard as long as our guards. Like Warren has kind of played in there since he got here. Xavier was moved in there, and now he's been there for a while, but he still hasn't seen the twist and the action as much as Warren has.
So I think that the Smart description there for Truss is a pretty good one, in that you certainly get the impression that Xavier's been like right there on the cusp of being a guy they felt very good about playing for quite some time. In fact, they did feel good enough about him to make him the starter at left tackle a year ago. I think maybe to the surprise of some who maybe thought, well, that'd be a role that would have gone to somebody else, Broderick Jones, someone along those lines. And yet instead it ended up being, kind of Truss that got that spot, that opportunity there against Cincinnati. And mixed results, probably didn't have his best game there, but clearly he had worked his way up the program ranks enough to kind of be in that spot there at that time. And all of a sudden now kind of shifting around, becoming a guard and getting a chance to play pretty well. This also, I think, kind of coincides with some of the stuff that Smart said on Monday as well. And if you go to the DawgNation YouTube page, you can hear this. Maybe we'll play the audio for you at some point in time this week. We don't quite have time to right now. But the notion that, well, Broderick Jones also been at left tackle for you for a couple of games here, given the injury to Jamari Salyer. Is there a chance that Jones stays at left tackle, and the spot that Truss ended up occupying some on Saturday, that actually you end up going with Jamari Salyer, one of those guard spots, and that becomes your best five here the rest of the way? And Smart was certainly very non-committal on that, essentially, not just sidestepping the question, but just flat out rejecting the chance to answer that, saying he didn't want to tell anybody what he was thinking about that. But we know these are the things that Georgia's considering, and we know that for as dominant as Georgia's been, and there's no question this is the number one team in the country right now. We talked about some of the statistical stuff that backs that up yesterday. The fact that Georgia is not just distancing itself from the rest of the country right now, but really on both sides of the ball from a statistical standpoint, is actually putting itself in some pretty rare company in terms of recent great teams in college football, the likes of 2012 Alabama, 2013 at Florida State. You can go back and listen to yesterday's show for more on that. But even in the midst of a season like that, there are going to still be some concerns. There are going to still be some things that you're working to improve, working to get better at. And I think for Georgia right now, that offensive line is obviously one of those issues. It remains to be seen, will this group be able to get it done? It's not obvious that it won't. But when you want to make those comparisons to the best Kirby Smart team before 2017, there are a lot of reasons to suggest that this current Georgia crop could be on pace to outperform what 2017 did here. But the one area in which that's probably not true as of yet, a 2017 team very quietly put a very effective offensive line together. And if you want to know the simplest reason why Georgia's results that season were so much better than they had been the year before, when 2016 Georgia struggled, 8-5, they were having a hard time even getting wins against really pretty meager opponents. Year over year, tremendous growth. Year over year, much better team. Obviously, Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel coming back were a big part of that. But the success that Chubb and Michel had in 2017, better than they had been the year before, some of that was due to Nick getting healthier, but a lot of that was due, they're just running behind a better offensive line. So if you're looking for where this current Georgia team here in 2021 still has some work to do to match what that 2017 team did, being better, especially in the interior of your offensive line, creating more opportunities for those running backs, that may be the one area right now where this current crop is still lacking in comparison to what 2017 was able to get done. And maybe a personnel switch gives that a chance to happen, whether it's Truss staying in the lineup or Jones staying in the lineup and moving Salyer over. That's clearly the kind of thing that Georgia coaches are watching closely and making a plan for. It's also the kind of thing that I think Georgia fans are paying good attention and close attention to there as well, and I believe that is with good reason. It's around the doghouse. It's furnished today by our friends at Rooms to Go, and obviously it's the time of year in which you're at home. It's holiday season, and you get that fire in the fireplace, start decorating for Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever you're decorating for. You just love being home this time of year, and comfortable furniture, good-looking furniture, is a big part of what makes you feel cozy when you're in your home. And if you feel like your home could use a little work there in that regard, then Rooms to Go is where you want to go to get all that taken care of, whether it's that one piece of furniture or whether it's the entire room. After all, Rooms to Go is famous for helping you furnish the entire room if you need to, whether it be dining room, bedroom, living room, your kids' room, obviously outdoor furniture. What a great holiday gift that might be for those that want to take more advantage of their outdoor living space. Rooms to Go gives you a chance to do that there as well. Also, if you just need that accent piece, Rooms to Go has got that for you too. So you can start your shopping experience at roomstogo.com. That's the word two spelled out T-O, roomstogo.com. Or you can go by in-store and sit on the furniture, feel it, lay down on it, get the experience of what it's going to be like to have that right there in your home. However you feel like starting your shopping experience, online or in-store, Rooms to Go can take good care of you. And they can furnish everything you need to make your home feel exactly and look exactly the way that you want it to look. Around the Doghouse, furnished today by our friends at Rooms to Go. All right, before we're done here, a lot to do. There are big-time coaching rumors out there around the SEC. We will cover all of that on today's program. College football playoff top 25 re-released last night. Little chatter coming off that. Probably not a ton, but there's a little bit of chatter and discussion happening around that right now, so we will cover that. I'll give you more clues about how you can be a part of our big Dog Nation tailgate on the day of the SEC Championship. But for now, on everything happening with the Dogs, on the competition for UGA in a pursuit of a national championship, let's cover it all. Special guest on the program today, it's Mr. College Football Tony Barnhart. Glad to have him with us. Glad to have all of you with us as well.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
Special guest on today's program, Mr. College Football Tony Barnhart. Always glad to have him because, Tony's knowledge of UGA and knowledge of what's happening around the SEC is obviously so high. Tony, you've seen a lot of Georgia teams. I made a brief comparison a moment ago to the 2017 team. Obviously, we can go back to the 1980s, 1982, the last time Georgia was unbeaten in conference play. This Georgia team, the first ever to go 8-0 in conference play here. I think as you watch the rest of the season unfold, you really see a lot of examples of the fact that right now this current Georgia team almost stacks up really pretty well with almost any team that Georgia's ever had in its program history. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Matter of fact, I had a chance to talk to Coach Dooley a couple of weeks ago, Coach Vince Dooley, and he said the thing about the Georgia defense now, he said, Georgia had some great defenses in 80, 81, 82, and 83 in that 4-year stretch. Coach Dooley's point was that the thing about those defenses, he said, we had about 4 or 5 really, really great players and a lot of really good players. He said, you look at the front 7 of this Georgia defense, and you say, how many of these guys are going to get drafted? And probably all of them.
Yeah.
And so he said that is the difference, is the talent and the depth of this Georgia defense and an offense that's finally starting to heal up and show some things.
I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and I think that the concern that some Georgia fans have, though, is, well, you had these great defenses in 2018, 2019. Those were teams for Georgia that kind of came short, missed the college football playoff. They came up just short on all of that. And in big games, some of those good defenses, got all they wanted from a great offense. Think about the 2017 team against Oklahoma, or the 2018 team giving up 35 to Alabama, or the 2019 team giving up 37 to LSU. And admittedly, as a fan of this team, somebody who wants Georgia to win, that's on my mind a little bit here or there as well. But, Tony, the one thing I keep coming back to is, and admittedly, I hope I don't end up being disappointed about this, the one thing that I think makes this defense different is you do have a level of NFL talent here that's really unmatched by anything that, even in the Smart era, that Georgia's been able to do. But beyond that, they're sacking quarterbacks more. They're just more aggressive. The previous version of Kirby Smart defenses were pretty stingy, I would say. They didn't give up very many yards, they didn't give up very many points, but they were nowhere near, I believe, as impactful as this Georgia defense has turned out to be. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and the thing about it is this Georgia defense dictates the game. Okay, this Georgia defense controls what the other team can do. You could see it in the Tennessee game. Yeah, Tennessee came out, first possession, moved the ball down the field, but after that, Georgia pretty much dictated all day long. Coaches in this league, what would get them is the fact that when Georgia substitutes, particularly on that front and on front, the people that come in are just as good. And so that depth, particularly when you get to November, as we are now, that depth is a wonderful thing to have.
want to ask you a couple questions about Georgia's chief competition here in the SEC. Before that, real quick, I don't know if you had a chance to hear this, but there was some audio that got leaked out, supposedly, of Kirby Smart, the Florida halftime. It's funny, the modern age in which we live in, when really nothing is a secret anymore, nothing is private anymore, but obviously a very intense side of Kirby Smart there. If you want to know what it's like to be in one of those locker rooms, and the intensity there within, I guess that audio does a pretty good job of demonstrating that for you, does it not?
Well, I will agree with what our man Seth Emerson said on Twitter. I'm just totally shocked that a coach would use salty language in the middle of a great rivalry. I'm just shocked that something like that would happen. Now, I frankly, I haven't listened to it. I really don't care about it, but it is interesting what people do care about.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. When you look across the conference here moment, Alabama, and that's not a guarantee yet that Alabama is going to be in the SEC championship. They got two relatively decent tests still remaining. Arkansas this week, Auburn injured Nair the following week, and they've lost the last two times they've been there. But I'm going to go, for the sake of conversation, and presume that Alabama does win the SEC West. How well do you think Georgia matches up with Alabama right now? And I guess vice versa. What can Alabama do in your mind that presents a problem for Georgia?
Well, what Alabama can do is their offense is they can run the ball. They throw it exceedingly well. Bryce Young is a mobile quarterback that extends plays and buys time with his legs, and they're just they're not otherworldly like they were last year, but they're still really, really good. And if I'm a Georgia fan, what I'm concerned about is kind of what you were concerned about going into the Tennessee game. Do they hit us with the big plays? Because if anybody's going to challenge Georgia, it's going to be because of their ability to hit big plays in the passing game. You're not going to drive the ball 80 yards against that defense, running the ball, stuff like that. So that, if I'm a Georgia fan, that's my primary concern, is the big plays coming out of their passing game. Alabama's defense is good. It's not great. And so what Georgia's got to do is avoid, I think if Georgia can avoid giving up the big play, I think they'll be fine.
When I look at Alabama, I think that they are justifiably the number 2 team in the country right now. I don't know how you feel about that, but I couldn't make a strong case for anyone being above Alabama. And here is where I think I'm a little bit different than I know Kirk Herbstreit's kind of argued against this. Other prominent voices have there as well. Tony, I can't be sure that a number 2 team playing Georgia close, even if it loses, and even if it has 2 losses, which Alabama would, I can't be sure that team would be excluded from the playoff. I think there's a chance they would not be. I am still of the mind that Georgia may have to beat Alabama twice to win the national championship. What do you think about that?
I saw Jerry Palm, CBSSports.com, in his projections. He had Alabama losing to Georgia and they're still making the playoffs at 2 losses. That would be the entertainment value on that would be something to behold from our friends in the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and Cincinnati. Can it happen? Yeah, because it's clear from listening to Gary Barta, the chairman of the committee, it's clear that they really like Alabama. I mean, obviously Georgia's number 1, but they really like Alabama at number 2. So I think it is possible, but my, oh my, if 2 SEC teams get in, for the second time in 4 years, there is going to be some upset folks.
Well, if we want to game this out for a moment, here to me is the easy way that it happens. I think you've gotten a couple of clues thus far. This committee doesn't think much of Oklahoma. They were not rated very high when they were undefeated. After losing, they've obviously dropped a good bit. They are now outside of the previous threshold for how low you can be ranked and still make the college football playoff. So that puts the entire Big 12 in jeopardy, I believe, there. Notre Dame kind of sits there as a pretty impressive one-loss team right now, but given the fact their one loss was to Cincinnati, it seems like it'd be difficult to maneuver Notre Dame into a playoff unless you also include Cincinnati, something I don't think the committee really wants to do there. Oregon's got Utah this week on the road. That's not an easy game as it is. They've also had a hard time finishing these seasons in the past when they've had a chance to be a playoff team. It's almost like the thing for Alabama could be that some of the would-be occupants of that spot, they may just either not be able to be taken or kind of fall by the wayside along the way. That could be the path that it ends up being cleared for Alabama there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And if you're Alabama, and if you're Cincinnati, you need for Oregon to lose to Utah and get out of the picture there. because Oregon's other losses to Stanford are a pretty bad Stanford team. They've got that one on the road at Ohio State, but Alabama at 2 losses is going in over in Oregon at 2 losses.
Yeah.
And I think the path to Cincinnati is for Oregon to lose as well. Because look, Georgia's obviously in. The Big Ten champion, Ohio State, Michigan State, is going to be in. The question is, who's the third team in? Is it Oregon? Is it Cincinnati? And so, I just think Alabama can get in with 2 losses. I just know the entertainment value is going to be off the chart.
Oh, there's no question about that. Let me give you, I guess, kind of one more thing to consider here, and then we'll let you go. I think it's still very interesting how involved the Big Ten is in all of this. And to me, it sort of feels like this is more than just 3 teams competing for one spot between Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. Much the same way we're talking about, well, what if 2 SEC teams make the college football playoff? I think there's a confluence of events that could still occur that could also see 2 Big Ten teams make the playoff potentially there as well. Not an easy needle to thread, but I can't rule that out either, that the Big Ten, to me, unlike the other conferences that are struggling to even find a playoff contender, the Big Ten right now, I think, has a couple of legitimate ones in Michigan State with a chance to really prove itself against Ohio State there on Saturday. That league, to me, right now is actually really interesting.
It is really interesting, and I think when all is said and done, based on what I've seen, I think Ohio State is clearly playing their best football of the year and better than those 2. But they all play each other. I mean, Michigan State plays Ohio State and Penn State. Michigan plays Maryland this week and Ohio State next week. Of course, Ohio State has their schedule. So is it possible for 2 Big Ten teams to get in? Yeah, but I got a feeling that's probably not going to happen.
Should I take that statement from you, though, to mean that beyond Alabama, you think Ohio State would be the next toughest test for Georgia? Should I take that to mean that?
Yes, you should, because right now they're playing at a very, very high level, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. They made some adjustments early in the season after they lost to Oregon, and those are paying off really well. So, yeah, if I'm Georgia, other than Alabama, Ohio State is the team that I'm most worried about.
Tony, great stuff. Always appreciate your college football insight. And of course, you're producing a lot of content there online. For folks who want to find you on social media or whatever else you got going on, how can folks get in touch with you outside of this program here?
Well, on Twitter, we're still at Mr. CFB. And our website is TMG College Sports, which is under the SI.com umbrella, SI/TMG/.com.
Great stuff, Tony. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you being here, and we'll look forward to hopefully getting a chance to speak to you soon, okay?
All right, Brandon, take care.
Hey, good stuff there from Tony Barnhart. Always appreciate having him as a part of the program. Also want to remind you to stay up to date on everything happening around UGA. Check out DawgNation.com. Big-time reports coming up from Kirby Smart press conference, all the things going on at Georgia practice there as well. And that practice coverage, that practice report brought to you by our friends at Georgia Farm Bureau. So if you want to find out Kirby Smart yesterday, pretty interesting update on Georgia Pickens. Obviously, a look at the seniors getting ready to play their final game at Sanford Stadium. Some are, some aren't. We don't quite know all the full details on that. Injury updates on Dominic Blaylock, Kendall Milton, a bunch of stuff online for you. DawgNation YouTube page, DawgNation.com. But that practice coverage brought to you by our friends at Georgia Farm Bureau. Here's the other thing that Georgia Farm Bureau knows. That for so many of you, you're talking about getting to work each and every day, and that requires dependable transportation. And that dependable transportation also requires dependable auto insurance. What that means is you want an auto insurance provider that keeps its promises to you. And that's what Georgia Farm Bureau has been doing for folks across our state since 1959. They keep their promises. They serve you well with local, folks who are helping you with your claim or walking you through the options when you first get signed up for coverage. It's folks who live and work and just do life in the communities all across the state of Georgia, much like the one that you're in, much like the one that I'm in. That's what Georgia Farm Bureau is. They're always the home team. You can find out more about them, gfbinsurance.com. That's gfbinsurance.com. And you can find out more about what Georgia Farm Bureau can do for you for your auto insurance.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
How much fun is it to have Tony Barnhart on this show on a day like this, looking at the historic nature of what Georgia's doing right now. 8-0 for the first time ever. Undefeated in conference play for the first time since the early 1980s, back when they played fewer conference games. And, you start to get the sense that if this thing finishes the way that it's supposed to finish, this is a Georgia team that won't take a backseat to anyone, certainly in program history and maybe even in recent college football history there as well. But obviously there is a lot to do before you get there, and there is nothing I can do to relieve the tension that December and January is going to bring with it. Big games just bring big feelings. That's why you want a fiery coach. We kind of jokingly played some of the audio of the speech against Florida. You want a coach that has that kind of energy. You want a coach that's fiery like that, because it takes that kind of intensity to match the intensity that exists in a big game like the ones that Georgia is about to play. It's also one of the reasons why we've pushed DawgNation unification around here. There are going to be people who try to stir it up, whatever else. But DawgNation, by and large, is really unified around the concept that this team this year has come together in a unique way. That for Georgia, for other college football programs, there aren't going to be very many examples of a team that has bought into the mission seemingly as well as Georgia has bought into this mission. It's not quite the same team we thought we were going to have. If you want to go back to like spring, summer, into the start of the preseason, a lot of injuries have changed a lot about the way that Georgia's looked on the field, but the results themselves are every bit as good as we ever could have hoped they would be. Kirby Smart says, this is our flippin', to use the word that I used in the edit a little earlier, this is our year. There's no reason to believe that isn't true. Certainly no reason to believe that whatsoever, and the postseason going to be a push there in that regard. All right, with that said, let's go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of our friends at Royal Caribbean. You want to talk about a ship that can't be stopped? Maybe that's what Georgia football is on the field, but on the seas. How about Odyssey of the Seas from Royal Caribbean? What an unbelievable vessel this is. I mean, this is just, like when I watch this video, and I realize, we have tens of thousands of people who are listening, podcast, radio, everything else. You're not seeing what I'm seeing right now, but you should do a search for this. You should see this for yourself. This Odyssey of the Seas and the entertainment options that are provided for you, whether it be the ice skating shows, the Broadway style productions, the diving shows, I'm talking about world-class entertainment, special, artists in residence type thing, just unbelievable entertainment options that fill up this ship to go along with the specialty dining like Chops Grill, or those cool bars and lounges where you get a chance to enjoy a beverage and look across the unmatched vistas, the beautiful seas there sailing through the Caribbean. This is going out of Fort Lauderdale right now for a few months. It's going to be shifting to Europe after that, but you can be on the ship. You can, go to Playmaker Sports Bar and Grill. You can do the bumper cars. You can play the laser tag. You can enjoy the orchestra that's in there for the shows in the house. I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. A lot of the itineraries also go to Perfect Day Coco Cay, which is a cool thing you've heard me talk about before. So check them out online. The website for the Cruise and Vacation Authority, that's the folks we want you to go to get your travel booked, tcava.com. That's tcava.com. Or give them a call, 770-952-8300. That's 770-952-8300. And we may have a big announcement coming up with our friends at Royal Caribbean here very soon. I'm not supposed to say that, but that's a little bit of a tease. So we will talk more about that at the time. For now, let's go cruise around the SEC and get some SEC news here for you. And there is a lot to talk about. A lot of this is related to coaching rumors. And admittedly, we're probably a little slow in doing this on the show because there was the flight plan rumor the other day. I love flight tracking season. I love coaching rumors as much as I love the games. I always have and I always will. My specific part of the coaching rumor stuff that I always really enjoy is the stuff related to private jets leaving so-and-so to go to so-and-so. And, these college football communities are small towns. You don't see a lot of private jets going from, random place to random place unless it's for a reason. And so there was a flight tracker the other day that spotted a plane leaving Norman, Oklahoma and going to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And a lot of folks were like, ooh, Lincoln Riley interested in the LSU job. And, other things have kind of erupted since then to maybe make you wonder if that was true. Riley was asked about that yesterday. He kind of gave what I thought was one of those non-denial denials, which is not the same thing as saying I think he's taking the LSU job. But I don't believe what Riley said about the overtures potentially from LSU were nearly as emphatic as what Jimbo Fisher said. Now, here's what I also believe, is that Coaches like to be wanted, not just to stroke their ego, but to counteract the fact that there is high pressure to win everywhere. Now, outside the SEC, which at least for now Oklahoma still is, it's different than inside the SEC. But Lincoln Riley's at a program where Bob Stoops won a national championship, where Barry Switzer won national championships, where the coach prior to that, the big guy, Bud Wilkinson, once won 47 consecutive games. The highest possible expectations for winning is what the standard is there at Oklahoma. And while Lincoln Riley's been in the playoff a couple of years and Oklahoma's fun to watch, they produce Heisman Trophy winners, they haven't won a playoff game yet. So at a certain point, the collar gets a little tight around Lincoln Riley, whether it should or whether it shouldn't, fair or not. That's just kind of the way that it happens. And so the way that you push back against that is you say, oh, you're not sure if you want me? You're getting tired of me? Well, maybe I'm getting tired of you. Maybe I'm flirting with LSU. Sometimes that's all this is, and with Lincoln Riley, we'll find out if there's more to that. Another coaching rumor that's out there, and we'll do more of this on SEC Country Live later on today, is the Virginia Tech job is now open. Justin Fuente has been fired. Fuente was one of those guys that was kind of a hot coaching name. I think most of us thought he'd probably do pretty well there, leaving Memphis to go there. Hasn't quite worked out. Sometimes it doesn't. But obviously everybody knows, okay, the legendary coach at Virginia Tech was Frank Beamer. And Beamer's son, Shane Beamer, is now head coach at South Carolina, who's had a pretty good year, but a pressure cooker in the SEC. Is Blacksburg, Virginia, does that feel like home to him? Is this one of those things where he wants to go there? Maybe he trades the prestige of being in the SEC for a higher quality of life, standard of living, and that you can survive longer at Virginia Tech with good to decent seasons than you can at a place like South Carolina. Or maybe he just wants to, fulfill the Beamer legacy at the place that made Frank a legend. One way or another, that's going to be kind of out there for Shane Beamer. We'll kind of watch that a little bit. Beamer has talked a lot about how much South Carolina feels like home. The fact that he was, just deep connections, obviously a former assistant there in the Gamecock staff, but other deep connections there too, to the state of South Carolina. Coaches say a lot of things that turn out not to be quite their authentic truth, but in the case of Beamer, you wonder how much of that was just make-believe and how much Beamer does really view South Carolina as kind of a destination job for him. That's a pretty interesting thing to kind of pay attention to. You got Will Anderson now being talked about for the Heisman Trophy, the Alabama linebacker. That's out there a little bit. And listen, this is all a day late and a dollar short. We've jokingly said before that, this is another example of Alabama kind of copying Georgia, we believe. We've obviously gotten the JD to NYC train down the tracks a pretty good bit, and here's Alabama kind of coming to say, hey, don't forget about Will Anderson. Anderson was asked about that this week, and he kind of demurred on all of that. Honestly, this tells you two things. First of all, Alabama's way too late to try to get Anderson truly involved in all of this. But the other thing here is that statistics alone are not enough to have this conversation. It's one of the reasons why people say, well, BA, why aren't you pushing, say, Nakobe Dean for the Heisman Trophy? Look at his statistics. Totally understand that. I think Nakobe Dean is legitimately one of the best players in college football, and legitimately he may be the best, having the best individual season for anyone on the Georgia roster. But when you talk about a defensive player winning the Heisman Trophy, it's such an outlandish idea just given what the recent track record has been. It's going to take more than stats to be a part of that. The thing that actually hampers Anderson's pursuit of the Heisman Trophy, even though he's got great stats, is the fact that the Alabama defense is kind of only okay. If great stats for an individual player were enough, Chase Young would have gotten the thing a couple of years ago. I mean, Kirby Smart's talked about this before. Is like you see these great defensive players, drafted in the top 5. They're getting the millions of dollars, but they don't get Heisman consideration. If great stats alone were enough, then Chase Young would have had his moment a couple of years ago, or any other player that you want to mention who's put up those similar, kind of Ruthian level stats for an individual season. It's just not the way it goes. That it's got to be, what the phrase that Kirk Herbstreit's used to describe Georgia, elite intangibles. The thing that's got to get you over the hump in a Heisman discussion is not the tangible thing, the stats that you measure. It's the elite intangibles, the way that you represent an idea. The reason why Jordan Davis stands head and shoulders above Will Anderson, both literally and figuratively, is not because he's necessarily a better player, although he might be, and it's not because he has better stats. He clearly doesn't. It's because he represents something about the Georgia defense that's just been better than Alabama all year long, and that's why that is. So that's kind of the idea there around Will Anderson and kind of why we think that Jordan Davis is just the better option all the way along there. All right, so I want to give you a quick update on this. So looks like Hines Ward's got a new job here. He's been promoted now. is going to be the Florida Atlantic wide receivers coach. This is a guy that years ago really made a big show about wanting to be an assistant coach at Georgia. At the time, that was kind of poo-pooed and, kind of disregarded. And Hines Ward says that, but is he really willing to go and grind and put the work in to be an assistant coach? Well, the answer to that question has turned out to be yes, he is. Now, I honestly don't know what Hines Ward views as his personal ambition now. We haven't heard him speak about this in a while. And frankly, I think that Georgia's got a really good wide receivers coach in Cortez Hankton. I don't think Hankton's going anywhere anytime soon. I think that Hankton is a real valuable weapon for UGA. So this is not me talking about Ward coming to Georgia. That's not what I'm saying here. But I did want to squeeze this into our SEC through in that what we're seeing now from some of these coaches, or should say some of these former players who want to be coaches, is they are embracing the grind. I think some people at one point in time thought Hines is too rich, he's too busy. Hines had a kind of a big life outside of football. He was on Dancing with the Stars or done a lot of TV and things like that. I think a lot of folks wondered, does this guy really want to roll up his sleeves and go be the low man somewhere and kind of work his way up the ranks? Well, I think he's showing you that, yeah, he's willing to do that. Even though his legacy as a football player is well established, he's willing to start from ground zero when it comes to being a coach. So I don't know what that means for his future, but I do think that's pretty cool that a guy who said he wanted to be a coach, a lot of folks kind of rolled their eyes and acted like that Ward didn't know what he's getting into. He's fully embracing it right now. And sometimes the timing doesn't quite work out, that Georgia may not ever need a wide receivers coach again, and Ward may end up going to coach somewhere else besides his alma mater. But credit to him for not just saying something, but actually doing something and realizing just how much it takes to be an assistant coach and starting at the bottom rung of the ladder. He worked in the NFL for a while. Now he's at Florida Atlantic, or, he's kind of like that bottom rung right now. But he's more than happy, seemingly, to work his way up, and we'll see what that means for his future. But I at least wanted to mention that because I thought that was kind of cool. We'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. All right, before I get back to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs here, let me also give you a couple more things here just for a minute too. We've been telling you about this now for a while. The big event happening on SEC Championship Saturday. Now, every time I say this, tickets go flying off the shelves. And we're trying to make the tailgate as big as we possibly can. We've got space in the Home Depot backyard to do that. But, y'all, there's beverage limits, there's food limits, we can't just bring in every single person who wants to. We've got to be a little bit, I want to say selective about it. We this is one of those offer available for a limited time type things because eventually we've just got all the capacity we can reach. But for now, we still do have some tickets available for our Chase for the Championship tailgate. It's going to start on SEC Championship Saturday. That's when the Chase for the Championship begins for UGA in Atlanta for the SEC Championship game. We're going to celebrate that with a huge tailgate, open bar, all the food you can eat, entertainment, a DawgNation Chase for the Championship t-shirt. We believe the Chase for the Championship for UGA begins in Atlanta. We think it ends in Indianapolis, and we're going to go with UGA on the entire ride here, and we want you to be a part of that when it gets going there on SEC Championship Saturday. It's from noon to 3 p.m. at the Home Depot backyard, which is literally the perfect location. It's right there next to the stadium. This is going to be incredible. So if you go to DawgNation.com, right there at the top of the page, there is a link for your Chase for the Championship ticket to be a part of that tailgate. Enjoy the food, enjoy the beverage, get yourself a DawgNation t-shirt. We're going to be hanging around that day. We'll be watching their football. It's just going to be a great time. Ask anybody who was with us for the Charlotte event earlier this year, or any of the other invasion stuff that we've done over the years. It's always a great, great time. Classy, fun. This is going to be it. So while there's still a chance, get your tickets to DawgNation.com for more on that. All right. With Charleston Southern coming in on Saturday, there is a lot of curiosity right now about what else we might see from Georgia beyond just the regular stuff we've grown accustomed to. Stetson Bennett, JT Daniels, whatever's going on there, the other stuff related to the offense. A lot of folks are kind of looking to see some of those guys that have contributed depth for Georgia. Maybe they'll get their chance to play on Saturday. Now, Kirby Smart wasn't asked directly if quarterbacks Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift would play on Saturday, but with the mind towards that they might play, his evaluation of Vandegrift and Beck did come up. And I thought Kirby said something pretty interesting about this. This is from last night. What he's seen from Brock, what he's seen over the course of time from Carson Beck. A lot of Georgia fans would love to see them both on Saturday. We don't quite know if we will. Obviously, the game will dictate some of that. Plus, JT Daniels needs to play too. But nonetheless, Smart gave you a pretty interesting evaluation of his third and fourth string quarterbacks Both of them highly regarded recruits. This is Kirby on Beck and Vandegrift. Take a listen to this.
I've seen Brock a lot up close because he's been the scout team quarterback. You know, he's simulated a lot of these guys that we've had. Really athletic, makes throws on the run, very accurate, competitive. You know, he likes going against that defense each day. He doesn't always have the best protection, but we're not hitting him either. So he's done a really good job. Carson's continued to grow. You know, he hasn't had as many reps as he had before. You know, before he was working with the twos, and now his reps come through either mental reps, walkthrough reps, or threes reps, which we get some in practice. So I've been very pleased with both of their developments. And to be honest with you, I got complete confidence in both those guys as quarterbacks because I think they're really talented players.
That's a phrase that Smart has used quite a bit, the notion of having complete confidence. You know, he said that for a while. And I know a lot of folks remember back when Stetson Bennett first emerged after one of the JT Daniels injuries. And a lot of folks were wondering, well, I thought it'd be Carson Beck. We were kind of led to believe that Carson Beck might be the number 2 quarterback, and yet it was Bennett. Because of, I think, his previous starting experience, ended up emerging there as the starter. And at that point in time, I think you were kind of left to wonder, what's going on with Carson Beck? And like the one thing I've said over and over again is that Beck's not behind schedule. This is just his second year in college, and his first year was the strangest year in the history of college football, given the pandemic. And I'm certain that not having a spring practice and all the other things that happened from that, I'm certain that had a little bit of an impact on Carson and probably hampered his development maybe, but apparently it hasn't hampered his development so much that Smart has something less than confidence in him. It sounds like he does. And obviously Brock Vandegrift kind of the same way. That if you want to go back to, like, say, 2016, Georgia really needed a true freshman quarterback. If it didn't have Jacob Eason, it might not have had much of a quarterback at all, with all due respect to Grayson Lambert. In 2017, Georgia was kind of in that same boat there at that time where, hey, Eason gets hurt, and if Georgia doesn't have another true freshman quarterback, man, they're just in a really tough spot. But that's kind of where you expect to be sometimes when you're a brand new head coach, when you're kind of rebooting a program from scratch. You just kind of expect to have some needs then that you hope you don't have later on. And now here in 2021, the Georgia program has grown. The Georgia program is not quite as desperate for true freshmen, or second-year quarterbacks as it would have been back then. All of a sudden now, it's experience that matters. All of a sudden now, it's comfort in the system that matters. All of a sudden now, it's the luxury. And don't think this isn't a luxury. For a guy like Brock Vandegrift, in particular, I'll mention him for a moment. For a guy like Brock Vandegrift to get a chance to be scout team quarterback, even if he's not, Kirby says, being protected very well back there, to be scout team quarterback going up against this defense, getting a chance to, even if you're using some other offensive systems, you're still getting into the flow of game, you're still getting a chance to go out there and play. You don't think that Brock Vandegrift is utilizing that to potentially become a better player? For someone like Carson Beck, who's just immersed in all of this now in a way that he wasn't able to do that a year ago. My feelings about Carson Beck haven't changed at all, given the fact that he hasn't really been able to play this year. My belief is, if anything, that Carson Beck is doing what other SEC quarterbacks have done. I'm not going to say he'll ever be as good as Mac Jones was. It'd be hard to be as good as Mac Jones was. But Mac Jones came to Alabama in the class of 2017, signed in the same class with Tua Tagovailoa, and Jones was literally an afterthought. But when his career was done, after waiting for a long time to get on the field, eventually emerged as a first-round pick. Now he's starting for the New England Patriots. That's the results, and that's the rewards that sometimes come from being patient. And this year, it's been a year of, I'm sure, tried patience for Beck, maybe less so for Vandegrift because he just arrived here, but he wants to play too. He's a competitor. Maybe Saturday provides that opportunity, and maybe we'll get a chance to see just how much these guys have grown and developed, and maybe we'll get a chance to see exactly why Kirby Smart has so much confidence in them. But one way or another, much the same way we wouldn't say the absence of playing time meant Channing Tindall wasn't a very good player. He's proving to you right now that he certainly very much is. Or Latavius Brigney, who waited a long time to play and yet has been a big contributor for Georgia here this year. Sometimes you wait. Sometimes you wait because of the overall depth of the roster. Right now, Beck and Vandegrift are guys who are being asked to wait. But one day their wait might be over, and they may get a chance to shine at their position as much as some other patient Georgia players are currently shining at theirs. All right, let's give a shout-out to our friends at Marco's Pizza here, and we'll tell you that you're getting ready for some football this weekend. You're getting ready for, to me, it's always the post leftover hangover from Thanksgiving. At a certain point, you've had all the Thanksgiving leftovers you can have. You want something different. Well, Marco's Pizza is a great different thing for you to enjoy after all of that. Order online, Marco's app, marcos.com. Take advantage of great savings, including a bundle of a large one-topping pizza, the pizza bowl, which is like the pizza flavor without the crust, and cheesy bread. It's all just $21.99 right now. So that's great savings. You can check all of that out. Marcos.com, the Marcos app. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers, get it.
I've seen Brock.
So, quick confession here, and one of our video commenters called me out on this a little earlier. I worked probably a little harder than I would like to admit on getting the Kirby Smart edited audio together a little earlier. So I almost didn't have a golden shoe at all. I had some golden shoes planned today because we've been overrun with very good golden shoe submissions. But I had to kind of get something together kind of quick here. So we're going to give out a golden shoe today, and this will probably lead to another Friday. We'll do a golden shoes dump here at a certain point in time and get a bunch of these out there for you. But one of the things I talked about on social media was how much fun it was to see Neyland Stadium empty out on Saturday. That's the kind of thing I never get tired of seeing. Georgia literally running an opposing fan base out of its own stadium, and I shared my shot of that. A lot of Georgia fans shared their shot of that with me, including our buddy Luke Barton here, saying clearing the stands at Rocky Top was great to see in person. I'm glad Luke got a chance to see that. We'll make him the golden shoe winner for today. And we'll remind you, speaking of lousy, stinking Gators, how about 346 days from right now, Georgia goes back to Jacksonville, beats up on Florida again, and will, what was the phrase? Break them on offense, break them on defense. Yeah, good stuff from Kirby Smart. Check out DawgNation.com if you want to hear the unedited version of that. And we'll see you tomorrow here on DawgNation Daily and on video. Time now for our R.S. Andrews cool down. Hope all of you are doing well. And I'm curious to know, how do you feel like we did in editing the Kirby audio, knowing we can't play the real thing, at least not with my bosses overlooking me, or in the case of radio, FCC and all the kind of stuff there that goes along with that. You feel like we did okay with that? Michael, can we play that for folks one more time, just for the folks who may have missed at the beginning of the show? So here was our version of kind of like doing the Kirby Smart, fiery speech at Florida that's been leaked out, and by now y'all have all heard the clip and probably not too scandalized by it. But here is our attempt to kind of clean this up for a family-friendly audience. Tell me how well you think we did with this. This is me trying to help out Kirby Smart and make this playable for air. Take a listen to this.
You know what, guys?
Flipping. Flipping.
Here we do it how we play. It's 0 to
Flipping.
0, and you make them never want to play again. Don't say
Stop.
so they're undisciplined.
Behinds.
We are disciplined. Physically, I want to break them. I'm talking about
Flipping.
breaking
Gentlemen.
on defense and offense.
So that was our attempt to kind of make this sort of like a TV edit, like the movie edit. That was our kind of attempt to do that there a little bit. So we will take your comments here, part of our R.S. Andrews cool down on Facebook, on YouTube, on DawgNation.com, on everything else there as well. We'll get ready to roll out of here after that. Boy, the YouTube folks are just going back and forth about something. I'm not even really quite sure, but I'm not. I just don't have the energy to do quarterback debate today. I've said my piece on this a million times, and I'm just going to kind of leave that there with the Billy Hurley laughing at the gentleman line. Yeah, I had some fun with that. I have to admit, I had some fun with that. Travis McCullough also having some fun with that there as well. So good stuff. Since the Facebook folks aren't arguing with a troll, I will begin over here. Paul Baker wants to see more of JT on Saturday. I'd like to see more of him too. I mean, I just first of all, I just like watching JT Daniels play. But second of all, I just kind of like to see what he brings to the table. I mean, one of those days where it'd be nice to get 4 quarterbacks involved. I don't know if you can do that. I mean, are there examples of Georgia playing 4 quarterbacks in a game? Maybe there are. But if you can do it, I'd like to. I'd like to. Tim Tatum says that was so flipping awesome. That's funny, Tim. I appreciate that. Miriam Martin Corbin, appreciate that there as well. Keith Folds gives you, how about them flipping dogs? That's pretty good. So when I was a kid, though, there are a lot of movies that I never really saw like the true version. All I saw was like the version that aired on the USA Network or like whatever other network, Channel 69 or Channel 36, whatever else. That's all I ever really saw. And so I have a lot of examples of that. Now, I will also say this. In our house, it's about 1951. Like it's kind of perpetually about 1951 in our house. So we have kids, I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. We're very restrictive of the content they consume. Parents can raise their kids how they want to. Frankly, I'm not interested in what other parenting decisions are until it eventually impacts me later in life. But in terms of what people choose to do with their kids, it's not my place to judge one way or another. Just for us, we're very restrictive when it comes to content. So Christmas movie time of year, we always kind of go and try to like record what's the TV network called? It's like Freeform or something like that. So we'll record Elf and Home Alone and Christmas Vacation, a little bit all that. It's a little bit hard to even do the TV edit of that for the kids. But we'll record all these movies on the TV edit version because it's just a little safer to play. As I said before, like I'm an old soul. My wife's kind of an old soul. We're raising our kids in the 1950s. It's Ward Cleaver all the way around there, and so we do a lot of TV edits around the Christmas season. And so that was kind of my TV edit version of that. Randy Weatherford said after that audio we could flip more players, and I think players do want that. I think that. So here's the thing, and I think a lot of you kind of understand this. I've heard a lot of opposing fans in the last 24 hours say, boy, I wish my coach would do that. I mean, a lot of Florida fans themselves are saying, boy, I wish Mullen was more like that. But here's the thing that and this is why, you see people on, podcasts, things like that. They all got everybody's got their own style. Eventually you just sort of have to be yourself. You just sort of have to be comfortable being who you are, and you have to hope that people respond to that. Coaching, I believe, is the same way. So let's say I'm a coach, and let's say I'm inspired by Kirby Smart, and I want to go do this to my own team. I want to just peel the paint off the walls with a halftime speech and get them fired up. I want you to eat, or I want you to break them, or whichever one of these Kirby Smart speeches you want to replicate. If you try to do that, and it's not authentically who you are, players are going to be so turned off by that. So the commenter who says, I think recruits would like this, I think you're 100% right. But what they really like is not just the speech itself. They like the fact that Kirby is the kind of guy who can do that. There's a lot of stuff over the years that comes out with Kirby. Some of it is, like recruits will I guess there's really no Periscope anymore, but they used to kind of like Periscope. I guess it's Instagram Live. Maybe they would do now. They'll kind of do that of their visits, and you see a little bit of Kirby that leaks into some of these videos sometimes. And he's just kind of a dude. I mean, he's multimillionaire, lives in a gigantic house. He's one of the, and I mean this literally, one of the most powerful people in the state of Georgia. But he's not one of these guys that sort of, eats his M&Ms with a knife and fork. He's not one of these guys that's so, he's not stuffy. He's just able to kind of be a guy. He hasn't forgotten what it's like to be a up-and-coming football coach, whether it's working at Valdosta State, which you once did, or whether it's, with the colleagues of his who are still high school coaches. He just knows what it's like to be around football. He's not one of these guys that has, graduated to being a CEO and he acts like some sort of stuffy executive. He's a football coach. He's a guy. And, if he were hanging out with you in the middle of your backyard, patio, having a beverage, I think he'd be comfortable in that. And he would be the life of the party. He'd be telling the funniest jokes. He'd be, bringing the most energy. He's not one of these guys that has to fake it or put on airs. He's just not. And that works really, really well. Gerald Harmon says he used to buy the old NWA album, so he knows what that's all about. George Herndon says it's in Kirby's soul. He's always been like that. And, guys want to play for guys who have as much emotionally invested into it as they do. That's just what they want. And that's why some coaches don't have that. And, I think one of the things that the average fan will be very surprised by is how many programs around college sports, you see this in football, I've seen this in basketball, where the coach really is the CEO figurehead. And the coach really is the kind of person that represents the face of the program to the media and to the boosters and things like that. But the real work's being done by somebody else. This happens in basketball a lot. Like I can tell you some very famous coaches in basketball that probably just weren't really coaching their team. It's almost like they were the ghostwriter or they were the author, but there was a ghostwriter that did all the real work. This happens in basketball a lot, and you see this. Watch when key assistant leaves so-and-so school, and watch the way that team just kerplunk, just absolutely plummets after that, because that was the guy who was doing the real work, and the figurehead head coach just wasn't doing that. And you probably have some examples of that in football from time to time there as well. It's just a larger football staff, not too much responsibility can fall on any one person. But in the case of Kirby Smart, that's not what he is. He's not the figurehead dude. He's not the dude that takes the heat from the media or takes the phone call from the booster while the hard work is being outsourced to some younger, more energetic guy. Kirby Smart's energy goes right there alongside anybody. And I can tell you this. Now, it's been a while since I've been to a Georgia practice. The media's seen some practices this year. Nobody saw any of practice a year ago. But I saw a decent number of Kirby practices, at least those small windows that media gets a chance to see. I saw a decent number of those a couple of years ago. What I can tell you is you got Todd Hartley going out there, and he's just coaching his face off every single day. You got Dan Lanning doing the same thing. Glenn Schumann's doing the same thing. You get these guys who are just, they're just in it. And Kirby Smart's right there. Like, if you saw Kirby Smart the way that he's running around, a lot of it's on the defensive side, but he's also just kind of in the center, and he's just getting everybody moving from station to station. If you saw him during one of these practices, he's just as involved as any of the assistant coaches are. That's the kind of energy level that he brings. Now, eventually he's going to get older, and that may happen a long time from now, but eventually he's going to get older, and he won't always maybe be able to bring it quite the way that he is right now. But this is another reason why Georgia fans ought to appreciate this era in which we're in, that Smart has figured out something that's not very easy. Most coaches who are as young as Smart aren't nearly as successful as he is. They may have an over-index of energy, but they don't quite have the over-index of wisdom. And so what Smart has done, biding his time, working under Nick Saban for a long time, stockpiled wisdom to go along with the energy that he has. Some coaches are just like, young coaches are going 100 miles an hour, but they kind of have that sort of fake it till they make it mentality. They really don't know what they're doing. They just know they're going to do it at full speed. Well, Smart's got a good, healthy dose of both of that, which is not to say that he never makes a mistake, or not to say that he, is impervious to, error. No one is. But Smart right now is a pretty cool intersection of the kind of boundless energy that allows you to even make a speech like the one that he made, combined with the kind of measured thought process that allows him to have a fully formed vision for what he wants Georgia football to be. And that's why this is so much fun for me right now. As a media person who covers it, or as a fan who just watches it unfold, that's why it's so enjoyable for me right now, is that you don't get this cross-section of abilities very often. A young coach with boundless energy who also seems to have a fairly well-stocked reservoir of wisdom, that's pretty good. That's pretty good stuff. Let me go back over to YouTube, see if they're still arguing with that dude. Thomas Van Santa says he's got Auburn upsetting Alabama. Woo-wee. That'd be something. I mean, I think I saw where, if you care about analytic stuff, I joked about this earlier this week. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You don't have to. But I guess the analytics folks give Alabama an 83% chance. Did I see this right? I forget what it was. But, I mean, Alabama is – there is a non-zero chance that Bama does lose one of these games to Alabama or to Auburn. I should say to Arkansas or to Auburn. This is not one of those things where it is sewn up for Alabama. They've lost the last two times they played at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And, boy, you talk about just throwing the SEC West into chaos. Let Alabama lose one of those games. That's what kind of happens there. That's kind of what happens. Wayne Mohammed says you can get a team fired up with all that cursing. You probably can. I'm not going to judge Smart for the language that he uses, but obviously there are different ways to do different things. I think there are coaches who don't use bad language, and I think they have full control of their team for doing so. I agree with that. But I'm not going to say that what Smart does is necessarily wrong for him. It's just not really my place to judge that. Silent Chaos says, I'm excited to see what Arkansas can do against Alabama. Honestly, Silent, I'm right there with you on this. I would be surprised if Arkansas wins. But, Arkansas has turned out to be a pretty good team. They are, 7-3 right now? They're ranked in the college football playoff top 25. obviously Georgia handled the Hogs pretty good in Athens a few weeks ago, but Sam Pittman's really doing it. He's really doing it. And I happen to, have some reason to believe they're also about to unleash a lot more in recruiting. Remember, he inherited a recruiting program that had essentially stopped trying. Chad Morris was not a recruiter. He wasn't even really attempting to recruit. That's kind of what he kind of inherited there. Well, that's not quite what's going on with this team anymore. What's going on with this team now is, Pittman's reaching out all across the Southeast. Pittman's still a major factor in recruiting the state of Georgia. You want to go look at some of these high school teams across the metro Atlanta area, across the state. Look at how many of those kids have Arkansas offers. Pittman's, making good use of those Arkansas planes, and he's getting, or whatever access to planes Arkansas has, he's getting to Georgia. He's extending offers. He's doing a lot of that. Thomas T-Bone says it'd be nice if we rest our starters for the championship and playoff. I think Georgia gets a chance to do a lot of that the next couple of weeks. It's the luxury that comes when you handle your business. That's exactly what Georgia has done, and they get a chance to do that. Lesko says that if we win it all this season, it's going to be movie worthy. He says break them in theaters soon. Yeah, I like that, Lesko. I like that a lot. Green Soldier says, do you think Bama could survive losing to Georgia and Atlanta by 14 and still make the college football playoff? No, I think 14 would end that discussion. I really do. And I'm someone who kind of has run counter to some people who don't think Alabama can make it as a 2-loss team. I think Alabama could make it as a 2-loss team, but I think a 14-point loss to Georgia would probably end that discussion, I believe, which is one of the things we talked about yesterday of you want to game this out a little bit. So let's say that Georgia's up 7 minutes to go. In a normal situation, you're just trying to win that football game there, but knowing that Georgia's path to playoff might be a little easier, worth risking it maybe. Do you try to punch it in, get that extra score, beat them by 2 touchdowns so you don't have to beat them again? That might be an interesting coaching decision that somebody might have to consider. Cozart says, does Pickens come back if he doesn't get a first-round grade? That's a great question. I'm not quite so sure. It's at a certain point, some guys are just ready for the NFL. I don't have any insight into how Pickens feels about that at the moment. Chase Spitzer says, I hope Pickens comes back, but I don't think he'll be playing this weekend if he's non-contact during practice. Yeah, obviously I haven't given up on hope that Pickens plays again. And, maybe it's the Tech game. I know there's been some online chatter related to that. I know Pickens had I don't speak Instagram very well, but I know he had the thing in his Instagram story. I took a shot of it where, let's see if I can do this. Can we do this? Michael, are you right there? Let's see if I can do this. It's probably not even necessary. Can you zoom in on this? See if you can zoom in on this. This may not work. Yeah, it's too dark. People can't really see it. It's okay. Thanks for trying, but the image is too dark. It's too dark. But Pickens had this thing where he was like, somebody, I guess, made the graphic that said soon or something like that, or maybe Pickens said that. Like I said, I never know what's on Instagram. But there was a little bit of an Instagram post from Pickens that got some attention. The fact that he has stayed so close to the program has always meant something to me. And keep this in mind. That, last week, Kirby, I thought, gave a fairly pessimistic update on Dominic Blaylock, but then lo and behold, Blaylock traveled to Tennessee and actually put a uniform on and was working, I think Jeff Sentell said, with the 2s during warm-ups, which maybe means something, maybe it doesn't. Sometimes that warm-up stuff gets overblown, I think, a little bit. But so last week, there's a chance that Kirby sandbagged the update on Blaylock a little bit. Is he sandbagging here on Pickens now too? I don't know. We would have to see about all of that. Let's see what else. We go to DawgNation.com. I continue to be of the belief that you could get an emotional lift from Pickens even if he just came back a little bit. Georgianne Olive says that cursing is more effective if it's a rarity. If it's a constant part of your everyday speech, it loses its power. I will say this, that I think that's probably true. I also think it's like if you watch like comedians, like the comedians that find a way to be funny without using bad language, I just think that's funnier. Like I said, I'm not judging somebody for using bad language. I'm not interested in doing that at all. But to Georgianne's point, like think about somebody like like a Jerry Seinfeld, who didn't really use bad language in his stand-up routines. I know I'm going back to the 90s and 80s here on this, but those people that found a way to be funny without doing that, I just think it's just a harder thing to do. It's a little bit easier to get the shock laugh when you use the curse word. So the people that found a way to be funny without doing that, I'm not saying it makes them better people. I just think it makes it's a higher degree of difficulty if you pull that off. Obviously, guys like Jeff Foxworthy and others who've made careers for themselves being very funny without doing that. As I said before, it's just a higher degree of difficulty. So I give them respect for that. Matt Rukavina says, not sure if I read the comments. He says he was much worse to Tennessee on Saturday. Matt was towards those Vols, which he doesn't like. Yeah, I'm glad to know that. I guess I was so overwhelmed by the comments of folks complaining about the audio quality of the post-game show. I maybe missed everything else. And yes, we do have that fixed. John Carter says the pearl clutching over the language in the locker room is kind of funny. I actually haven't seen that much. I haven't seen that much pearl clutching over that. I mean, I really have not. It's almost like there's outrage to the outrage, but the outrage doesn't really exist. I mean, I really have not seen anybody who's scandalized by it. Even, I don't mean to pick on her by pointing out, but even Miriam Martin Corbin was like, this is a locker room, I'm fine with that. I mean, I really have not seen, she said that on Twitter. I saw that. I just don't see, I don't see a lot of outrage against this. Jermaine King says, I've probably never seen the unedited version of Caddyshack. True story. I have now, but I probably saw Caddyshack on the Golf Channel 10 times before I saw it on DVD. That is a true story. CDA asking about Tyree West. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's online chatter, of course, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to speculate about what it means, but I've noticed that chatter as well. This is a very busy time of year where everybody's trying to make their final decisions about where you want to go to school or what you can do with your available scholarships. And I'm guessing there's probably a lot of last minute, whatever you want to call it, dotting I's, crossing T's, whatever else, some last minute stuff to make sure everybody's where they want to be. So I would say that we may hear some of these long-standing guys from Georgia thinking about exactly what they really want to do. So I know that's not really an answer to your question, and I'm sorry, but I'm also not going to openly speculate on what we think might be going on when I think we both think the same thing, but I'm not going to say that out loud. There's just a lot that's still going to be, considered related to all of this. And obviously that's a very good defensive lineman. Whether he chooses to go to Georgia or he makes a decision to go somewhere else, somebody's going to get a very good defensive lineman. That's what I do know. Yeah, GATA Dog says, you mean it's recruiting season now? Yeah, we're actually getting to even the time of year where even Dan Mullen might say it's recruiting season. Mullen's about to come out from his slumber. All right, what's going on? Let's see if we can get some recruits here. He's getting ready to step out of that slumber, whereas for Georgia, recruiting season has been going on for a long time. But this is now the recruiting season where everybody's trying to decide, okay, I know you said you were doing this, but now are you really doing this? Is this really what you want to do? And so that's what Jermaine King says. Miss Miriam curses all the time. Let's see what else. Somebody mentioned the idea of Kirby having kids. I think is it Cherie Byron? Did I pronounce that correctly? I mean, listen, I also coach kids, and I would not talk to kids the way that Kirby talks to full-grown college players, but I think that different coaching responsibilities require different things. And I think, the stakes are high in big-time SEC college football. I do. And the tension that you live with probably requires blowing off a little bit of steam. It just does. I think you see this in a lot of walks of life there as well. I don't mean to be a nerd for a second, but like Malcolm Gladwell has written about this when it comes to like air traffic controllers talking to airplane pilots and the intensity that exists when an airplane needs to make a different decision so it doesn't crash. Now, that's not the same thing as trying to win a national championship, but there's an intensity of language that gets used in situations like that where you kind of forego pretense, you kind of forego all that and you just get to the heart of the matter. And I think that the way an SEC coach would speak to SEC players is different than the way I'm going to speak to a 10 and under baseball team. And it should be different. And, you need quality leaders of men, young men, at all levels. But the way in which you lead a young person changes depending on what you're leading that person towards. The same way way in which you explain certain concepts. The way in which you explain a concept to a young child is different than the explanation you might give to a college person. That as you grow older, your capacity to handle things is just differently. And that's that. Megan Womack also pointing out that it's a locker room. That's totally true. Although he did say HBTFD in a press conference a couple of years ago. But as I said before, I don't need Kirby Smart to behave the same way that I do. I really don't. And I don't have an opinion on it one way or another. This is what he does with his team. It's clearly working for his team, and it's not. It doesn't scandalize me at all, nor do I think it scandalizes the overwhelming majority of Georgia fans on that there as well. That's not the same thing as saying, and you better believe you should all be talking that way. People should make their own choice. How they choose to interact with each other is their own business here. It's just not. Miriam Martin Corbin does check in to validate what Jermaine said. She said, I am known to spew a few bad words towards referees and our opponents and their fans in the heat of battle. Well, there you go. See, even the great Miriam in the heat of battle is going to let one fly every now and then. And as I said before, that you can't live with that tension forever. The tension of when the winning is so enjoyable and the losing is so terrible, you have to blow off that steam somehow. You cannot exist with that tension. You would literally implode. You would literally collapse from the inside. So different people have different ways of blowing off that steam. They just do. And, some of those are healthier than others. I would say on the spectrum of how do you handle that, going on a cursing tirade is far from the worst thing you could do to deal with that pressure. If that's what allows Kirby to, as Kevin Costner used to say in For the Love of the Game, if that's what allows Kirby to clear the mechanism and go out there and, handle his business as a coach, allow his players to handle his business as players, there are far worse ways to handle that tension. But the tension exists. You've got to do something about it. And that's what apparently they're doing about it. And it is clearly working. Worm wondering about the video or the audio being strategically released. I have to admit, Worm, I said this to our First and 15 audience a little earlier. I have a conspiracy theory virtually about everything. I don't believe in large-scale conspiracies. I believe in small-scale conspiracies. My small-scale conspiracy is that this was leaked intentionally, that it's just too cool not to. The same way that the I want you to eat speech got leaked, the same way that there was a Jalen Carter hit during practice last year when he was true freshman, when nobody had seen him play yet, where it's like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? Jalen Carter is going to be a weapon, and it turned out that's exactly what it was. The George Pickens amazing, like crazy, contorted one-handed catch that he made in a scrimmage back before his freshman season began in 2019. I believe all these things are probably sanctioned leaks. George is just too buttoned up to have 4 things like that kind of creep out into the internet without Kirby Smart absolutely losing his mind. Obviously they're not going to admit that. There's a reason why it's leaked and not just shared via the official account, because it's the kind of thing that you just kind of want to drop out there. But this certainly does not paint Georgia in a poor light at all, and so therefore it's just kind of cool that it exists. Mark Brantley says, I'd hate to be on the receiving end of Kirby's ire. Yeah, I can tell you this because I've known a lot of players. You don't want to disappoint your head coach. You don't. Especially when, your interactions with the head coach are typically a little less than your interactions with your position coach. Players don't want to do that. Players have that healthy respect for their head coach, unless you're Texas or Florida, one of these places where they're just collapsing. Then the respect goes away seemingly. But in good, well-functioning programs, there's a little bit of fear that exists there. That needs to be. It's like a family, It's like if you're the head of your household, you obviously show love and affection, but you want that respect there as well, and certainly plenty of reason to believe that exists at Georgia. Dog Daddy asking about Stetson Bennett additional year of eligibility. Yeah, he does. A lot of these Georgia players do. And for a lot of these players on Saturday for the would-be senior day, we don't really know who's coming back and who's not in some cases. All right, we're going to get ready to go. Let's see what else. Barry Watkins says the SEC Shorts video was funny this week. I haven't seen it, but I heard it was really funny. It was really funny. Neil Calvino, very funny. I'm learning all kinds of stuff about Miriam I did not know. That's great. Oh, Randy Weatherford says, I see Georgia like the Bulls of the 90s. Boy, what a great comparison that is. Kyle Martin also agrees it was an intentional leak. Yeah, I think that's probably the case. I also told you that the Ed Orgeron Roll Tide what FU thing from a couple years ago, I think that was also intentionally leaked there as well. Now, LSU may pay for that for the rest of time, but I believe that was also intentionally leaked too. I think most of this stuff is just intentional. All right. Let's get ready to go. All right, good stuff. Thanks for being here. R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Y'all check out R.S. Andrews online. Air conditioning, probably don't need that right now. Heating, you definitely need to make sure that's ready to go. Plumbing, electric, that never goes out of style. Make sure you trust them for all that. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. Make sure you check them out for that here today. R.S. Andrews online at rsandrews.com. Also, check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as well, ajc.com, for everything going on around Atlanta, both in the world of sports and beyond. So there's a good story at AJC. You know, cooking a turkey is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Some of you like to smoke yours. Some of you like to deep fry yours. Obviously, this is the time of year, one of my favorite viral videos, and they always drop the frozen turkeys in the deep fryer and it always explodes as a way of warning people what not to do. Well, our food and dining editor for the AJC checked out some folks on the Butterball hotline in terms of the questions they field about how to cook a turkey. Not an easy thing to do, but a pretty good story there at ajc.com on that. Also, don't forget, Falcons play tomorrow night against New England. There'll probably be 50,000 Patriots fans in Atlanta. But nonetheless, you can follow all of that and check in on Georgia Tech before Georgia plays them in a couple of weeks' time. Atlanta Journal-Constitution online at ajc.com. Appreciate you being here on DawgNation Daily here today. Hope all of you have a great day. We'll see you back here 9:45 tomorrow morning, 1st and 15, 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily. We'll look forward to talking to you then, everybody.